Evening all. Welcome to Salisbury City Council's full council meeting on this, the 4th of March. Time flies when you're having fun. Apologies. Do I have any apologies for this?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hawke, Councillor Blackwood and Councillor Muse.
Thank you very much. Public questions or statements, do we have it?
I can confirm no questions were received before Friday at midday, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3, councillor questions or statements, do we have it?
I believe there was a question raised by Councillor Ed Rim.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question is, given his expulsion from the Conservative Party following anti-Semitic remarks, why has Mayor Atkul Hawke not been removed from his position, and why has no public statement on the matter been made by the administration of Salisbury City Council?
Councillor Tones.
After discussions, Councillor Hawke has informed all group leaders of his intentions to step back from mayoral duties for a period of time to allow him to concentrate on the dispute resolution process. The administration and the Vice Chair acknowledge the appeals process which is entrained within the Conservative campaign headquarters, and a separate complaint which is at the information gathering stage with the monitoring officer at Wiltshire Council. Both are instances that are yet to conclude. The council will await the outcomes of these processes before deciding on what steps are permitted. Thank you.
I would like to propose we move on to next business.
Councillor Rimmer.
I just wanted to respond by saying I understand there's an appeals process taking place, but we've all seen what the comments are. They're now in the public, they're in newspaper, and I think it's beholden upon the council to distance itself from those comments. And I feel strongly that the council should have done that. And it feels like by not doing so, it just invites speculation. And as I say, the remarks have been made, they're there. They've been judged by the Conservative Party to be anti-Semitic. We can all see them, we can all see that's exactly what they are. So it seems odd to be waiting for an appeals process before at least suspending, rather than just waiting to see what happens.
Thank you. There's no process in our standing orders to suspend a mayor, for starters. And whilst the investigation is going on, because anything that is said has an impact directly on his family and his children, it is best that we wait until the process has been followed correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor is absolutely correct. Under standing orders, section 5F, the chairman is the chairman until they resign or is disqualified or until the next annual council. In addition, under section 14D, dealing specifically with complaints under the Code of Conduct, which this comes under, upon notification by Wiltshire Council that a breach has occurred, the council shall then consider what action to take.
I would just question the saying that the investigation is still taking place. The investigation by the Conservative Party has taken place, and the result of that has been published, and the result of that is that he has been removed from the party. He's choosing to appeal that.
Chair, can I make a point of order? According to the standing order, the member is allowed a supplementary question. He's had it. He's not entitled to any other further comment. It's to ask without discussion. We've had more discussion in the standing orders. I step move on.
Thank you, Councillor Charleston. Councillor Rimmer, if you have an additional supplementary question, by all means, you can write to the administration through the clerk. Thank you. Item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. To approve as correct and sign the minutes of the last meeting of full council held on the 22nd of January. Are you happy that I do so? We are. I shall sign those at the end of the meeting. Don't let me forget, Ace. Declarations of interest. Do I have any? Dispensations.
None, Chair.
Chairman's announcements. I sort of have two. The first one is happy birthday, Councillor Charleston. Councillor Netball has something he would like to say.
That's kind of you. Many of us will realise that it's 2015 on March the 4th. We had the terrible Novichok or Salisbury poisonings here. What did I say? Oh, got me fines and names. My apologies. 2018, and I just felt that we should acknowledge that that happened. There was many councillors in this room, both at Wiltshire and at Salisbury City Council, as well as in government. And I feel that we should just note that in this meeting and give our thanks to all those that were involved in getting Salisbury back into business and on its feet. Of course, some of those projects that came out of the Novichok poisoning funding that came from government, we are still seeing, and that is the High Street Fund and also the River Park project, and also in fact, the station forecourt. Three projects that were partially funded or helped to be funded from post Novichok. However, what we should think about is our residents and all those that were actively involved during that time. And they are the ones that bear the scars today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Nettle. Okay, item 8, administration leaders report. Who's taking this one? Ian, are you taking it?
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, can I just say that a lot of the last little period has been taken up with the bedding in of our new 2 officers, and we very much welcome them here today. I think we should have a big round of applause for both Asa and Joe and the management team for that being a fairly seamless operation. And it's probably just about a month now that Asa's been here, so I think you're probably understanding how the council operates a bit better. And Joe's last day was last Friday, so she's left the council now. And I did notice in a certain pub that night, there was a rather large, rowdy bunch of people in the corner. So I assume somebody was giving Joe a good send off. And I personally think she was very much appreciated. And I think we all wish her well in the future, in whatever she decides to do. So during the last little period, we had the Holocaust Day on the 21st of January here in this room, which was well attended, and a big thank you needs to go to Sarah Gregson for organising that. We had the Rule of Law service yesterday, organised or asked for by the High Sheriff of Wiltshire, and I think again that went off fairly well. We have accepted an offer on 47 Blue Ball Road, and there we are at the moment at a very early stage with that. Flooding has been and still is a bit of an issue around town, as we can all see. And I again would like to thank Sven for his work he's done in organising the wardens and having meetings to make sure as much as possible can be done. Although quite clearly, Mother Nature is always a difficult one to be involved with. We've opened the youth bursary grant scheme, which is due to close on the 24th of this month. So if any applicants want to come forward, actually the closing date is on the 18th of March, you notice. So last year, Salisbury Rugby Club, Salisbury Football Club, Salisbury Area Young Musicians, Wiltshire Creative and Motivate were all successful in getting funding from this council for their youth projects. But the closing date, as I say, is on the 18th of March for those applicants, if people know of anybody who might be interested in that. We had our first Sunday artist market yesterday, and the weather actually was quite good. And I think a number of, it was well attended by artists. Again, I'm not too sure how many people were there, but it was well attended by artists. It was good to see again. It shows that spring is on its way anyway. We are having our successful wedding fair later this month on the 17th of March. So this Guildhall will be advertising itself as a wedding venue. And anybody who is considering getting married or knows of anybody who wants to get married, please consider this venue as one of your choices. And that's about it, really. Most of our time has been taken up, as I say, with the new officers who are very pleased that they're getting the grip of how the City Council runs, and that's very much nice to watch. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It's going to take a while for the officers to get a grip as to how this council runs, I can tell you. Haven't been here for 11 years. So, okay, thank you very much for that, Administration Leader. Referral of minutes, item 9. So we have Planning and Development, 23rd of January, Events, Markets and Grants, 29th of January, Community Services, 5th of February, Planning and Development, 19th of February. If everybody's happy, I'm going to take those on block. No comments, I'll move that from the chair. Considered moved. Thank you. Committee reports. Chairs of committees, now is your chance to shine. Caroline.
I beat Tom to it. It was almost a race, wasn't it? Community services. Well, what can I say? An absolute amazing service that the communities team offers. If anybody did come to a meeting and saw the report, it is absolutely immense what they achieve with such a small budget. Unfortunately, we lost a lovely chap called Tom, who has now gone to work at Sarum Academy. He did, I think it was over 1,700 hours of active engagement to keep people active with sports and things. He was an amazing sports coach. He's now gone on to work at Sarum Academy, but he is a loss to us. The Panthers doing amazingly well. The whole communities team, they are just immense, and I can't thank them all enough.
Thank you, Caroline. Todd.
As ever, the planning committee is the busiest committee on the council. Yeah, I always say it. And actually, I'll just do the opposite of what I usually do. I always say to members, you're all welcome to attend, but actually, I'll just say thank you to all the members who, are on the committee and all the work they put in. Thank you.
Not a great deal to report because Mark Reed is currently putting together a detailed report for next Monday's Environmental Services Committee meeting. The transition to the new depot is proceeding as we expect it to, and as far as I'm aware, everything's running smoothly.
Thank you, Chair. Not much report on events, markets and grants, as we still are not giving any grants at the moment. The last time we met, we approved some rent reductions. We changed some policies, but it's a pretty quiet meeting. The big challenge, of course, following the events, markets and grants subcommittee is the loss of Joe, and hopefully we can have a replacement who is just as on it regarding event planning.
Thanks, Sam. Anybody from Finance and Governance? Not, I think we've had a great deal from F&G recently. I don't think we've had a meeting for ages, have we? Al, right there, thank you very much. No F&G meeting since the last meeting. Thank you. Okay, committee outside representatives. Do we have anybody from any outside representatives that would like to say anything about anything? Absolutely.
Very, very briefly, I mean, a very pleasing report. We're talking about allotments. They got through remarkably well with all the flooding down in Ashley Road. Yes. And Cold Harbour Lane, obviously, was the people for that. Are now actually open again on Saturdays and on Sunday mornings. So if you want to buy your potatoes, get them now. Get them now and get them put in. the trading hut's been a good success and doing very well. And there is something that you can all do. You can go along and you can swap plants or seeds. There you go. 9th and 10th of March, donations of plants, seeds and tools are welcome. So go along and get them. Where? It'll be at the Fisherton, off Cold Harbour Lane. Yeah, the Fisherton A, isn't it?
Allotments.
Yeah. Yes, Fisherton A. And so if you need tools and anything like that, you can go along and do that, and that'd be absolutely brilliant. And you might be interested to know, if you're an allotment holder, that the Scarecrow competition has come back to everybody's enjoyment. So if you've got somebody that you want to put a profile of in Scarecrow clothes or whatever, you can work with an allotment holder to actually have some fun with the Scarecrow. Yeah.
I just add that a former prime minister was a scarecrow and made national news. That's how big the scarecrow thing is in Salisbury.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it has gone out of favour for a couple of years. Now it's coming back into, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Jeremy.
Thanks. Yeah. Could I ask whether there's any plans from the allotment holders to literally feed into the pantry with produce as we get into warmer?
There's a group, a community group that's been set up, and it's in Benton, isn't it? Yeah, and that's they can go down and get their supplies and things from the trading hut.
But no intention of putting it.
And
What
that's
I'm getting at is the people that come into the city, say from the Friary, who use our pantry.
yes.
It would be good to have some of the allotment.
Yeah, they're ready to go, and they're just hoping that people are going to respond to what do you want to see in your community allotment that would go down, and then if there's lots and lots of stuff left over, then.
Sorry, I don't want to go on too much about this, which I am. In quite a few towns up and down the country, we see allotments absolutely, whether it's but providing food into areas like our pantries, etc. Well, I'm conscious of that. If people have got to go somewhere, they won't. But if they're coming into our pantry, it's all there. Now, I know there's a question of vegetables not lasting very long, but I just felt that there was a way of linking the two together. That'd be great.
I think it would definitely be on people's minds to say, how do we get, if we have got surplus and we've got, how do we get that through? And that I'm sure it would go through the pantry.
Okay. Jenny, then Paul, and then we'll bring this to a close.
Thank you, Chair. I can tell you that any of the allotments that donate vegetables, they come up to the community fridge at Benton, and any excess, it does get shared back down to the pantry. So any city staff that turn up and say, can we have it, then goes down.
Chair, thanks to the fertility of Salisbury's soil, we have some of the finest and most verdant allotments in Wiltshire. And we also are lucky in that they're within the gardens of Salisbury. We have garden excess, lots of apples and pears, which go to waste. It would be wonderful if we could see the officers working with the Allotments Association and the community to bring all of that garden glut in at harvest time.
I'm sure the officers would love to work with you on that one, Councillor Sun. Okay, okay, so with a few of the other hats that I wear, flood coordinator, the only thing I would say that is please stop raining. I just want it to stop for a few weeks. I won't wake up in the middle of the night listening to my phone ringing for another flood of that. Air quality management group, some of you will sat on that. We're going to rejig that a bit because it's become an air quality talking group as opposed to an air quality doing group. So we're going to shift the focus of that a little bit. And the underpasses working group, which I know is quite close to Paul's heart as well. We did supply the Environment Agency with a photograph of the man in the tunnel in a canoe. And they went, okay, now we sort of get what you're talking about. So I am expecting a bit of movement on that, actually. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. The full specifics, we're talking about page 19, section 15, subsection A1. That is the inclusion of the title of Chief Executive Officer in the definition of the City's Council's proper officer. Whilst I respond to a number of names, my contractual title is that of Chief Executive Officer. So in terms of our standing orders, it would be useful for me if we could agree to that amendment. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that having changed the job description, it'd be stupid not to change the other bits that follow under that. Otherwise, it's a bit of an own goal. So very happy to support that and move that.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. I'm your new odd-looking responsible finance officer. But you can tell the difference between me and previous RFOs thanks to the coloured hair, I think. So this evening I've got 5 reports to bring to you. I do apologise. I won't always be trying to overload you with finance reports, but we are doing a bit of catch-up since the last permanent RFO left. So this is bringing all of the various bits and bobs up to scratch and up to date. So the first report, review of financial regulations. I've reviewed this. I used to be the equivalent of a responsible financial officer at other district councils in Oxfordshire, by the way. So having started here, I've reviewed all of the financial regulations. They're very clear. They're very well written. They're pretty much up to date. So all I've done is suggested 4 amendments. There's one key one, and then there's 3 minor ones. So I'm happy to take you through those, but if you've read the report, I'm happy to take questions. Either approach suits me.
Thank you, RFO. Any questions? None. In that case, the recommendations on the paper are to approve, so I'll move that from the chair. Are we all happy with that? Done. Approved. Thank you. Review and update of bank mandate. Item 14.
Thanks again, Chair. So it probably won't come as a surprise that with all of the changes in personnel, the number of the bank mandates we've got are out of date now. So this has come to full council requesting your authority to change the mandates. I've set out the various mandates in paragraph 3.1 of the report. It's in a table. We've got an HSBC online account, HSBC paper account. We've got the public sector deposit funds where we hold our deposit account. We've got an investment fund with our Arbuthnot Latham, and we've got a public works loan board facility, although we don't use it at the moment. And then there are 2 other ones over the page, which have got councillor, trustees and authorised signatories. I'm not suggesting any changes to those 2 over the page, which have got councillor authorised signatories, but it's those other 5 that have got officer authorised signatories I'm suggesting changes to. And the first 4, I'm suggesting all senior management team members, excluding the HR manager, only because it's not very good internal control to have the officer responsible for payroll to also be a bank authorised signatory, which is the only reason for excluding Tracy. But I'm suggesting for the first 4 accounts, it's all SNT members. So that gives us much more flexibility and coverage than we've had in the past. And then for the last one, the Public Works Loan Board, because it's so specialised and hardly ever used, I'm suggesting that the Chief Exec Officer and the RFO are the authorised signatories to that. Not that I expect to be using it in the next year or so. So really, it's just asking your authority to endorse those changes, and also subject to you approving that, to also make the necessary changes to the various delegated powers to authorise officers, just to make sure that they're consistent with that.
Thank you, Stephen. Al? Thank you, Chair. As a Chair of F&G, I'm happy to move that. I'm fine with that. We nearly ended up in a situation where with no RFO and no clerk, we couldn't make any financial decisions. So this seems eminently sensible to me. So proposed, seconded, all those in favour? Carry.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is the most exciting report I've seen on a committee agenda for many years. I never thought I haven't lived, obviously. But this is groundbreaking. This is Salisbury City Council becoming the very first ever parish council to make it from smaller authority status up to principal authority status. And I mean, that is really significant, but unfortunately with it comes so much bad news, as included in my report. So the main change is that we go from the AGAR, you're probably a much loved annual report and governance accountability report that we produce each year, which has got half a page of numbers in and a page of ticks, and that's the annual return. We go from that regime to what most of the world currently does, including limited companies, Wiltshire Council, all other public sector bodies that are deemed to be principal authorities. We join that club, and we have to go through exactly the same accounts regime as that. So we'll be producing 30 to 40-page annual accounts that have to comply with all the same rules, as I say, that Wiltshire Council and most other companies and organisations have to follow. And that's hugely exciting to me. I don't expect it to be that exciting to other members of the council, but with that comes a number of other changes. So, for example, we have to change our external auditor. So we were allocated an external auditor through the SAAA organisation, which most parish councils are. There's the equivalent of that for principal authorities, which is the PSAA. And the two options we've got, and when we say goodbye to our current external auditor after they've audited our current 23-24 AGAR, this will be the last time we produce an AGAR, during the next financial year, we need to get an external auditor to be ready to audit our first year of the new full code accounts that we'll be producing at the end of 24-25. And the two options we've got is we either go to the market ourselves to procure an external audit firm, or we go through the equivalent of the SAAA, which is the PSAA. And in my report, I'm strongly suggesting that we go to the PSAA, which will allocate an auditor for us, because they take all the procurement risk. There is a real problem in principal authority audit world in that there's over 730 audit opinions of other public sector bodies and other councils, that those audit opinions haven't been signed off because there's a real shortage of partners and personnel in those big audit firms. And unfortunately, we're going to be joining that environment. So if we try and procure an external auditor in that environment, the chances are no one's going to be interested, because we'll still be considered to be a fairly small, unknown, alien-looking fish in a very big pond. Whereas if we go to the PSAA, they'll take on all that procurement risk and they have to provide us with an auditor. So that transfers the risk to them, and we won't be saving any money. In fact, we might have to throw more money at it if we try to procure ourselves. Unfortunately, though, if we do go to the PSAA, they've already given us a helpful indication of what the audit fee is probably be, and it's probably going to be about 60,000 a year, which is clearly way more than it's ever cost us, because there will be so much more work that external auditor will have to do to verify that our accounts, which will be why far more detailed and complex than they've ever been before. It could come down in future years. I've been told that year 2 onwards, it might be less than the 60,000, but I don't think we can assume that. So that's the sort of level of audit fees we'll be paying in future. So the recommendation is really to, with your permission, to approach the PSAA in order to arrange our next external auditor.
You can hear the excitement, can you? Gosh, I wish I wish I'd been an accountant, honestly. Sam first. Jeremy.
Thanks, Chair, and welcome, Steve, as our new RFO. I'm looking forward to working with you as a member of F&G committee. My question really is one of clarification. So obviously this change for us in terms of our annual revenue has been coming down the track for at least as long as I've been a councillor, so that's just under 3 years. And I remember having a conversation with your predecessor about the fact that we are going to become one of these principal authorities in terms of our audit needs. So can I just clarify that these increased audit fees, as you say, 60,000, I think previously it's been 30,000. I think that's what's been budgeted before. Have that been built into our budgets sort of going forwards as a council? Because obviously this has been well known for at least the last 2-3 years. And I think it would just be good to make sure that we as a council have had the foresight to sort of start building those costs in previously, and we're not sort of scrabbling around to find that increase in fees now.
In answer to the question, have we provided for the roughly £60,000 a year? No. It was the audit fees previously been less than £30,000. The council did have the foresight to increase that for next year as part of the January budget, so it has increased to 30,000. That was the best guess back in January, I think. No, as far as I'm aware, no officer had any conversation with the PSAA at that point. So there's no reason why they would have known that it was going to be of the magnitude of 60. So they provided an increase. With hindsight, it wasn't enough. Though I don't think we can blame any individual without that conversation with the PSAA. It was only my conversation that got that out of them. I don't think perhaps in January they'd have been prepared to have an estimate, but now it's clear that we have crossed the 6.5 million for the third consecutive year. We plan to. I think they've crystallised their own thinking in terms of how much audit time would be needed of a first year audit. So I don't think it'd be fair to criticise any individual in January. But in answer to your question, no, we haven't provided enough in 24, 25, nor in the 4-year medium-term plan. So in terms of 4-year planning, the hit is the increase from 30 to 60, but times 4 years, unfortunately.
Thanks and welcome, Steve. My question's along the lines of what additional governance or risk registers do we need to keep as we move to this new hire system? Because I'm sure there needs to be more. Having a risk register, we have a risk register anyway, but given the increase in our turnover, surely that brings its own risks as well. And I would have thought that from a government point of view, there's an important aspect there.
The first thing that's worth noting is that in the new regime, we're going to have to follow the SIPFA Code of Practice on Local Authority Accounting, which I've already purchased on behalf of the council. It's what I'm used to from my previous career in district councils, but it's going to be brand new for the council. So just complying with that will require more cost centres, more use of the chart of accounts within the financial system that we've got, the exchequer system. It will require more oversight by councillors. I'm suggesting that as a standing item to F&G committee, each of its meetings, I'll give an update on this project because I'm managing it as a project. The transition between AGAR and full code audit is probably an 18-month project. And I'm sure that councillors, particularly at F&G, will want regular updates to make sure that we're on track to meet it. the proof of the pudding will be that getting our first year accounts passed by the auditors without qualification. I mean, that will be a real success. There's lots of technical things that could trip us up. We're starting to identify the risks. You'll see elsewhere there's an internal auditors report where he noted that we didn't have enough financial risks identified within the corporate risk register. So I've committed to the fact that we'll provide more information in terms of a financial risk register as part of the corporate risk register later on in the year when we come to review that. And I imagine that will come to another committee of councillors. You'll have a second opportunity there as well as F&G. So yeah, there's a whole raft of changes we'll have to make. And all I can assure you is that, you know, one by one, we're going through the code of practice and making sure we address each one.
Thank you. Councillor Bain.
Thank you. This is obviously going to be an additional expense to the council, but I think we should also look at the positives. We may be the first council to go through this audit regime, but we certainly won't be the last. And it's an opportunity for Salisbury to become a case study for this. So it's an opportunity to shine a good light on the council. And it also presents an opportunity for even more financial transparency, which a lot of members have asked for previously, with the additional detail that these audits will provide. Thank you.
Councillor Victoria Charleston.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come back on Councillor McGrath's point about planning for this, although our new RFO did do it very eloquently. Of course, we knew this was coming. We've been talking about it a long time. I think all of us around the table are quite excited about, as Councillor Bayless says, that we are moving forward and we are the first to do this. The £30,000 that was put into this year's budget for this new audit change was an increase. It was a stab in the dark by officers because we did not know. We do now have a figure. We will have a figure going forwards, but it was the best that we could do. As we said previously, given that we had no permanent RFO, no permanent clerk, we know that this year was quite a difficult one for officers and councillors. But we are moving forward. We're getting to grip with it all much more, and hopefully this will be the last time we see this.
Councillor Sample.
Chairman, looking on the bright side, one of the things that's always been said about small parish councils is that they are much more in touch with their local residents and are able to do more efficiently those things which large councils do badly and with poor accountability. Never was this more true than in Wiltshire, where there are enormous budgets, vast bureaucracies, and poor leadership, meaning that the delivery of services at the local level is poor. And we have recently, this year, as a city council, taken over responsibility for yet another area of work where Wiltshire Council was failing. And I'm pleased that we were able to do that. And I have no doubt at all that our staff will deliver a far better service than we've had from Wiltshire, who actually have almost desisted from providing a decent cleaning service, and for whom the pothole and road maintenance and clean seems to be a foreign world entirely. However, one thing that could be said is that when it came to auditing, our standards were perhaps not high enough. And I heard on one occasion quite recently a member of Wiltshire Council say that he wasn't happy about one or two rumours he'd heard about what was going on at Salisbury City Council. That was all he said about our budget, and he didn't go any deeper than that. But the reality is that with this new audit standard, we will have the gold standard. We will have the best audit procedures that it's possible to have in place. And I welcome that. If there were to be any criticism by Wiltshire councillors about what they have, quote, heard about what's going on at Salisbury City Council, then they have no need to worry in future. I'm absolutely sure that the additional cost of this, while not welcome, will give us greater financial transparency in the future.
Thank you. Sam, did you have your hand up just now? Someone's not thought I've seen that. Councillor Don.
Chair, thank you. Steve, nice to meet you as well, and look forward to working with you over the next year as well, till May next year. Moving up to the next rung, I think you mentioned we move into the level of what unitary councils are in. Now, probably, I thought Paul was going to mention actually, but you didn't. But a lot of councils, for whatever reason, have failed, including Wiltshire, to get their audit through. I think for many, many years. So they have no audits done for the past few years, which nobody yet has said around this table, but I'm saying it now. So are we likely to fall into that bracket?
No.
Or what are we going to do differently to make sure that our accounts are audited compared to what Wiltshire is not doing?
Sorry, I've concentrated more on the negative, which is like the cost of the audit fees, and the fact that some external audit firms will see us as new and therefore higher risk. But I spoke to both the PSAA representative who would be procuring an external auditor if we went down that route. I've also spoken to the SIPFA director responsible for advising on the financial regulations, and spoken to the National Audit Office representative, and all of them say, yes, but you've got a clean start, which a lot of those councils that have got outstanding audit opinions for many years, because they can never go back and get their oldest audit year signed off, because it's now so old that even if they could provide all the extra information that was asked at the time to satisfy the external auditor, it's too old now, so no external audit firm would sign it off because it carried too much risk. That's the reason why SIPFA, the NAO, the National Audit Office, and all of the other financial institutions are looking at ways to perhaps draw a line under those old audit opinions. Isn't, in my professional opinion, it's not the best way of doing it, but they accept that they're just the resource level and the historic risk is so high that they'll never get some of those opinions signed off. We come into it as our first year, clean piece of paper. We go from AGAR, which won't mean anything to an external audit firm, as a first year set of accounts. We've just embraced the code of practice. It's the first time we've tried to do it. We have to produce comparatives. We won't have any historic baggage that some of those other organisations have. So actually, the PSAA was saying to me that there's one or two of the newer external audit players in the big league that would probably prefer to take Salisbury on because we haven't got all that baggage. We should be seen as lower risk in that sense, that they haven't got to go back through years of trying to restore an audit opinion. They can just start from scratch. So that fills me with a lot of positivity.
Thank you. Fortunately, this council doesn't have any bridges or canals that it needs to worry about putting in their accounts and valuing them, which is one of the reasons why the accounts haven't been signed off yet, as we say. Caroline.
Thank you. Welcome. It's refreshing, and actually we're now in a very big opportunity for change and growth. And with what we've done with the environment team and the potential to earn from that, the council can go from strength to strength and build the reserves and just build its reputation back to where it should be. Salisbury should be great.
I would just like to move that we go with the RFO's recommendation of the PSAA route.
Second.
I just want to say welcome, Steve, and the change status is great. And I like the way that you're approaching it sort of stage by stage, and having been involved myself in governance and report and accounts and things for many years, I can see the huge advantages of this. So well done.
I was just going to say, welcome, Stephen. It's not all doom and gloom. The advice we get from SIPFA will be second to none. They offer excellent training courses and conferences to members. So if you want to know about local government finances, this is the opportunity for years to come.
Well, all done. The recommendation is the council determines to opt into the PSAA audit regime in order to be allocated an external auditor and authorises the RFO to make the appropriate arrangements. We have a proposal and it's been seconded. All those in favour? Aye. Carry. Thank you. Quarter 3 budget monitoring update. Steve, again.
Chair, I apologies on behalf of everyone that came before me that you haven't had the amount and degree of budget monitoring information that you should have had as councillors, and indeed the officers haven't either. And so apologies for that, but we are addressing that immediately. So this is the Quarter 3 budget monitoring report up to the end of December. It takes the form of a 5-page covering report and 2 appendices. The Appendix A is the full council snapshot at the end of December to just explain if some of you haven't looked at a budget monitoring report for some time. So you've got a list of, it's a complete council, it's got all of the cost centres of the council on the revenue side. The budget is the full year budget in the first column. The profile budget, apart from the precept and business rates, all budgets have been assumed to be evenly spread across the 12 months. So that profile budget is 9/12 of the year to the end of December. Then you've got the actual column. That's the obviously most important column. That's real expenditure and income. And then the variance is just comparing the profile budget with the actual and telling you whether it's a good or bad variance. On here, it might be counterintuitive. I do apologise. The convention used is that good news, a good variance where we've underspent expenditure or we've overachieved income will be shown as red in brackets. So red in brackets is good, black is bad. And that's why when you look at the bottom line, and it's all been totted up for the whole council, we're underspent by £171,000 at the end of December. That's still quite a small percentage change, but it's still the right way. So that's an underspend at the end of December. Appendix B is taking all of the variances that are over £50,000 on any code and then just listing them all. So they don't add up to anything, but they're just extracted from the more detailed report. And then the covering report then explains all of those £50,000 or more variances. And I wasn't going to take you through, the whole report, but that's basically what most of the report is. The recommendations, I'll happily take questions on any of the detail, but just to, with the chair's indulgence, I would like to add a 4th recommendation to the 3 that are already there. So just to make sure everyone's clear, the first recommendation is asking you to note the budget monitoring position and our officers' explanations of variances. The second one, and I can go into more detail if you want, is that Asa and I and the senior management team have looked at all the detail, and we're predicting, although it's an underspend, good news at the end of December, we think with the known pressures in Quarter 4, there is a very real possibility that we might be overspent by the end of the year. There's a few pressures, specific ones we're aware of, but also given the way in which some of the budgets are put together, we're just worried that perhaps there'll be a Quarter 4 catch-up of lots of expenditure, which could then throw us into an overspend situation. I have explained in the report that the reserves of the council are sufficient that they would be able to absorb any overspend. We're not looking at like millions of pounds or even £500,000 of overspend, but whether it's a 5-figure or even a 6-figure overspend, your reserves would be enough to absorb it. I know you'd rather not, but that's the situation I think we're facing. So the second recommendation is just so you note the predicted outturn and the need to use balances if that were to occur. The third recommendation is to make the point that although previous budget monitoring reports have come to F&G, your financial regulations actually require the budget monitoring reports to come to full council, which is why I'm bringing this evening. And it's really to ask you, which forum would you like future budget monitoring reports to come to? Quite happy to take it to F&G. You might want to split it by departments to different committees. You might want it all to come to full council, entirely up to you. But if you could give me some guidance, and we'll obviously make sure any of those changes are reflected in financial regulations. And then the 4th recommendation with the chairs and with your permission, I'd like to add is that we noticed that the shop mobility fees and charges were left off the list of fees and charges that came to you in January with your budget papers. And strictly speaking, they should have been included. So to just tie off that little loose end, I can pass around after we've discussed this report, just the shop mobility fees and charges for the sake of the minutes. And if you're happy, you could agree both the current charges for this year and the proposed charges for next year, which just missed off that schedule. And I do apologise for that oversight. So those were the four recommendations. Happy to take any questions on the detail of the report.
So a quick one from me first. So 7.4 would then be note the addition to this report of shop mobility fees and charges. Is that? Okay, so that will be 7.4.
Thanks, Steve. This council has supported the moving of our services in-house. And certainly the idea of a new building as well, and we've got that. Though we were all conscious, and I thought it was mentioned that we would monitor the costs of that, bringing those services in-house, in particular the depot, so we could just monitor it, so we knew where we were. And I can't find that unless, and I have only been looking on, I've been away, I've only had my mobile phone to look at these, so trying to find the figures on that is very difficult. But I couldn't see where in this report that we might see that. And I'm sure that we wanted to identify, all of us wanted to identify those costs so we could control them.
Yeah, so you won't see it given the current way in which we've structured the cost centres in the council. So I've inherited the 17 revenue cost centres. I'm very satisfied that all of the costs and income associated with all of our activities go through those, but they're not very transparent. So I've already suggested to officers, and I'd also take your advice as well, to create more cost centres to have greater transparency. So the new depot, Mark Reed has already suggested to me he'd like that to be its own cost centre, and then you could use all of the various. Apologies if it comes across as patronising, but if you imagine the council is split vertically in 17 cost centres, so they are discrete. You can't mix them up, and that's the current 17 you've got. You could have 100. It's up to you how many you have. It really comes down to what projects or activities or services would you like to see reported on separately as opposed to amalgamated within some big mush that doesn't make any sense. And now I think we need more than 17 cost centres, and the depot is an obvious one that would be reported on in its own right. So that's the vertical 17 sort of departments of the council that are cost centres. Then the accounts, the codes, like payroll costs or vehicle costs or land and property costs or whatever, they're like horizontal across the council. They cross all the cost centres. And it's a combination of the cost centre, it's a bit like battleships, the combination of the costs of the vertical cost centres and then the horizontal codes gives you the place where every transaction is then coded. And we just need to make sure that we've got enough accounts to give you the objective analysis, payroll or sandwiches even, and then the subjective analysis, which is the cost centre structure, that gives everybody what they need in terms of reporting. And yeah, if it reassures you, although you can't see the new depot at the moment, you will see it for Q1 24-25. We're not making changes in the 11th month of the year, but we'll make sure that those new cost centres are in place for next year. So you should get much more transparency and visibility. And if that's not good enough, we can then make further changes. It's an iterative process.
Thank you.
Thank you. What strikes me is that you're saying that we can cover the overspend for this year from our reserves. But it looks to me, talking to colleagues, reserves have been kept to an absolute minimum. And this is not good. And in fact, the guidance for councils is that they should have much bigger reserves than we have. I'm told this is because of the previous administration. And the concern is that if the reserves are built up, they would just be taken out and removed again. That's that point. The next point is that I'm pleased that there be departmental and committee reports of what's happening in the accounts. But my thought is that all the departments or committees should have these reports regularly. And that both F and G should have the overall report, if, as soon as it is available, for each quarter, as well as it going subsequently to full council. They are my thoughts on this.
Chief Executive.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to say, under section 5.6, councillor, we set out, or our RFO has set out that council balances are significantly above the minimum level of 1.35. If memory serves, I think we're around the 2 million mark at the moment, RFO. Thank you. And just to add that senior officers within the council are welcome the additional transparency, the additional accountability, and the additional grip that these reporting lines are now giving our senior officers.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. Couple of questions. This is probably, I wouldn't say the most exciting, because I don't get excited over financial stuff on council agendas. It's one thing, it doesn't turn me on, but I can spend my own money and sort my own money out. When it comes to this, you often scratch your head and have to ask further questions. But you've explained it very well, I have to say. So I applaud you for that. I don't think I've seen that explained to members in all the years that I've sat here. Going back many years ago, not on this council, but the district, I'm going to talk about Salford's council. Now, each committee had its finances broken down and reported on, which this council doesn't seem to have. We get it come here, and it's, as you just explained, there's so many sections and everything else. To me, I want to know what each committee is spending. You know, at the end of the day, we're a parish council, and that ought to be broken down to committee level, quite frankly, and should come to, you know, the committee should be approving, in my opinion, what its precept raise ought to be, whether it's November or whenever it is, I don't know. And then obviously that goes to full council for recommendation. I think this is fine coming to full council, possibly annually or whatever it is, but each committee ought to have its figures broken down. In my opinion, I think that'd be far better. It makes it more, the committee more accountable, and I think more understandable, not only to members, but to members of the public who probably, if they're looking at this, they're scratching their head over it. There's so many, you know, what are all these lines? Which service do they go to? There's so many. I mean, Paul, we had the budget ripped to shreds, so to speak, between, or you did the work, but and it's very difficult to actually tie stuff down to where actually that money is, and I don't know who did that over the years, but obviously it was done to that extent. But I think you're going to look at it differently, which I think is refreshing. But in my opinion, it should go to each committee and broken down at committee level.
Just can you put up the recommendations on the screen, please? That's all.
New 7.4, Chair. There's a new 7.4. Yeah.
No, it's literally so that we could actually see what we were talking about. Just having it up on the screen so we could reference back. It's like point of order really, rather than wanting to discuss it. Thank you.
Steve, could I just clarify? It seems to me as if you're heading towards a different kind of structure of how the accounts will be presented in a way that perhaps I'm more used to than I've seen before on the council accounts. But could I just clarify, will the accounts show, for instance, the Guildhall income expenditure? Will we see those shop mobility income expenditure? Will we see that kind of broken down within the accounts? I don't mean now. I'm from the 1st of April. Will we see those so that we can say, well, actually, you know, for example, the Guildhall needs more income. How can we generate more income to cover the costs, etc.? And we can see the depot, how much the depots cost. Is that the way we're heading, or we're heading in a different way?
Yes, so if each of you and each of the officers were given a blank piece of paper to design your new cost centre structure from scratch, you'd all come up with different ideas. So all of it is possible, but we have to agree on what's the best compromise between all of us. Definitely, I think there's not enough cost centres, these buckets. You can have 100 cost centres down to shop mobility being its own cost centre, and on every little project being different, and then you could aggregate them up. So the best way is to have more than you want to actually see on a report, and then just aggregate them to come to committee or to come to senior management team. But it gives you the granular detail at the junior manager or even the practitioner level, that they've got way more detail than probably you'd ever want to see. So that's what I'm working with senior management team colleagues with, is to, be brave, come up with the smallest granular detail that you might want to be able to cost. I've been told from both some councillors and officers that you like proper full costing at project level, including payroll costs. It seems amazing to me, having joined here recently, that your payroll budget sits on one account. It's not even divvied up between the departments. So you can't even see how much a department costs, fully costed. It might look like it's doing really well, but that's because all the payroll costs, which is obviously your number one cost in a service industry, that's all being held centrally in the establishment. So we have to be conscious of that. We can't fly before we can walk and then run. So we're trying to do this, stage by stage sensibly, because if you try and get to the end result too quickly, we'll make a hash of it. And not only will that ruin any budget monitoring reports you get in the first 2 quarters, it might actually ruin our end of year accounts. And then we get qualified accounts in our first year of the big league. And that would be a huge embarrassment, being the number one case study in parish council land. So we need to make sure we do it sensibly. But yes, I am working with officers to try and create new cost centres like the depot, possibly shop mobility. And if it's not good enough, then by all means feedback that you wanted more granular detail than that, and we can keep incrementally getting better, but in a more systematic way. I hope that makes sense.
I would just add to that previously the administration did have the idea of going down to have greater cost centres, but what with the changes that occurred over the last year in staffing, that fell by the wayside a little bit, because we had, we're changing our FOs and all of that. And I would much welcome a greater cost centre, especially for places like the crematorium, which is fairly easy to do, and perhaps the Guildhall. I would say, going back to sort of district council days, it won't solve everything. There will still be grey areas where you're not quite sure where to put that cost, or the costs go across all areas. So it isn't going to solve everything. And then you get into arguments about what percentage share the CREM takes of establishment costs, because there always will be establishment costs. What percentage share the Guildhall takes of establishment costs? And then it goes down, even down to silly things like photocopier and national insurance and all the other stuff. But yes, it's a way to go. But I'm just saying, don't expect it to be 100%, because nothing is. And it never was under sort of district council days. I can remember managers of certain facilities being very cheesed off about why they were being allocated certain costs, including, I can't remember one, but something like some asset value. So like a Guildhall, do you put an asset value on the Guildhall? Do you put a cost in terms of if you were to sell the building, invest that money? Or do you, what cost you put in for the infrastructure of the building? And that was where a lot of officers would get pretty cheesed off because they felt they've got a cost there of 180,000, which isn't a real cost, but it's there because that would be, if you were zero budgeted and did everything from scratch, you might say this building sold, you could earn in interest so much money. So it's what I'm saying is it's not as straightforward as everybody seems to think it will.
So interestingly enough, Councillor Thomas has just explained exactly why Wiltshire Council haven't been able to sign off their accounts for precisely that reason that he's suggesting. Victoria, last go at this. And
Yes, thank you, Chair. So one question to 7.2. So the overspend, obviously you said that all the officers looked at it that predicted that we're looking at an overspend. Can this be brought to F&G to look at as well, so that we're actually looking at, is there any way we can claw back from some of that overspend? And the second one is to recommendation 7.3. So I think, I can't remember which councillor over there was suggesting it, but just I think what the administration has suggested is that future budgetary monitoring reports are brought to F&G as it currently happens, but we do want to see committee spend, see that committee. So where we have events monitoring, that should go to the events committee, for example, so that those councillors can have a much better appreciation. But once again, congratulations for all your work. This is moving much towards the transparency that I think this council is looking for.
all right, thank you, everybody. You know what? It's finally everybody's coming around to my way of thinking. Yeah, I've always said we're going to work as a team and do it my way, and finally we're getting there. So just to sort of sum up from my perspective, I'd like some more detail in the cost centres. So, and I've used the example a dozen times, the crematorium. The crematorium generates £1 million worth of revenue for the council. What we don't know is, does it cost the council £500,000 to generate that million? Does it cost £1 million to generate the million? Or does it cost £1.5 million to generate the million? If it costs £1.5 million, then we need to be asking why we've got it on the books. If it costs £500,000, we should be going, fantastic, how can we buy some more crematoriums? Yeah, we're that good at it. So I really welcome that. And we can put the caravan and camping site into that as well. We can put the market into that. We just need to know where all the money's going. And as we've said earlier, it's transparency is the key here. The only other point I'd like to make is we talk about reserves in a different life. If I was sat on £2 million worth of stock in the business that I was running, or that was the part of my business, my accountants and my auditors would be furious. They'd be saying, why are you sat on all that money and it's not going anywhere? You're sat on all this stuff and it's doing nothing. I cannot conceive of an event that could happen to this council, which would mean we would generate no revenue at all for even the 2 months that are within our policy. Although this is where the 1.3 million comes from. I can't think of anything that could happen that would mean we burnt through 1.3 million pounds in 2 months with no other income. It would have to be an absolute catastrophe, and there would be so much other stuff going on around that the parish council wouldn't even figure in it. So I'm not a fan of holding millions and millions of pounds in reserves, and the fact that it's 1.3, we've actually got 2, that needs looking at, because we shouldn't have that amount of money just sat around not doing anything. But that feature. So we have the recommendations 7.1, 7.2, 7.3. I won't read them out. 7.4. Could you just read out what we've decided?
Thank you. For 7.4, to agree the proposed changes as circulated in Appendix C. Appendix C that you have been given.
Councillor Gold.
Chair, can you clarify what 7.3 is, what we're deciding on that?
Under 7.3, it's the which forms should receive future budget monitoring reports. My understanding is at the moment that you've asked that to go to F&G, as well as there being a requirement, understanding orders for it to come to this full council as well.
And I thought I mentioned committees as well, for each committee to have everything broken down, staff costs, etc., for each committee.
In addition, yes, my understanding is that you would like further financial information included at reports in those committee meetings. Now, whether you would like a separate financial report that goes to those committees or financial information going to those committees.
All I can say is I would leave it to the chairman of those committees to decide what they would want to have. But if they don't get stuff, then the members of that committee are going to be asking questions, I guess.
Are the chairs of those committees happy with that? Because I'm not quite so keen on leaving a fairly open-ended recommendation. We need to tie it down to something. So I'd quite like some clarity on the words we're going to use if 7.3 as it stands isn't what we're going to agree upon.
Yeah, so my perception of the debate up to this point, although we've not really focused on it, was part of the reason why I wanted the recommendations up there, was just to refocus our minds. My suggestion is for the committees, is the relevant committees get the relevant financial information, would be 7.3. Obviously, Plan Committee doesn't have that.
So the good news is even the current cost centre structure divides very neatly into the committee roles and responsibilities. So unfortunately, we don't have the appendix up there. But if you just look in front of you to Appendix A, which is the full list of 17 cost centres, the very bottom one, active communities, that's all of what Sarah Gregson does. So that could come to that communities committee. The three above that, Guildhall, markets, events, customer services, yeah, that's what Joe was managing. That would naturally come to a committee. You've got most of Mark's, most of the remaining cost centres of Mark's, they could come to the environment committee, and that just leaves bits of establishment and other oddities like the democratic and mayoral services. They could still come to F&G as part of an overall counter-wide as well as that specific stuff. So the cost centre do divide neatly into committee roles, and would make sure that even if we create new cost centres, they would all be matched to individual committees. So the committees could receive a proper budget monitoring report specifically for them, looking at just the cost centres that cover the services they're responsible for. And if that's too much at the first time it arrives at a committee, the committee can obviously decide, no, thank you, we'd rather have a more summary version. But once they see that, they might actually quite like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when Sarah did her lovely report on the communities team, she'd actually done quite a big breakdown on the costs. So actually, the officers do put it in their own reports, but it would be nice to have a financial report as well to go alongside it. I think that would make it transparent for our residents.
Okay, so what are we actually going to put as the recommendation then?
I would propose that all committees agenda receive a financial report as it relates to their activities.
Yeah, so it will be a budget monitoring report with explanations of variances, but specific to that committee. And if it needs to be tailored, it can be. But that would be a very specific single format report that goes to each of the committees the same. And we'll start from that standard way. And hopefully committees won't want to vary it. But if they do, and they've got good reason to, we could deal with that then as well.
Sorry, Chair, happy to note the papers as they've been presented to agree the proposed changes as circulated in what will be known as Appendix C.
Chair, sorry, can you use your mic? Because if anybody's online, they won't hear anything.
Apologies. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Nettle, seconder. Councillor Bolwell. All those in favour? Carried. And 17. Internal Auditors Interim Report.
Thank you, Chair. So part of our financial regulations require all internal audit reports to come to full council. And I can only assume that's what's happened in the past, but this is the first time, and apologies for that. But yeah, so the latest internal audit report was dated December 2023, and this has been the first opportunity to bring this to you. There is a 3.5 page covering report from me, and then there's all the rest of it is the actual verbatim report from Mark Mulberry, the council's internal auditor. Within that report, which was also circulated and appended to the agenda, you'll be able to see that the vast majority of the checks that the internal auditor looked at, we passed. So it's a very satisfactory internal audit report. However, because I'm Mr. Negative, my report just then extracts all of the areas that Mark covered that he wasn't 100% happy with and where he made recommendations for improvement. So my report includes this table, which is all negative, but actually in the grand scheme of his overall report, yeah, this is the minority of the points. However, we need to demonstrate to you that officers have taken seriously what the internal auditor has said, because obviously the internal auditor highly qualified and experienced, and crucially is independent of the council. So this is your fresh pair of eyes coming in with no bias and telling you how it is. So on that table, you'll notice there's a list of weaknesses. Apologies, the very last one is missing a word. It should say fixed assets. So I do apologise for that. That's probably the most serious one of all of the concerns. But we've provided a final column in that table, which is officers' comments, a commentary on where we are in terms of addressing the internal auditor's concerns. And as you'll see, officers have agreed, every one of them. I mean, in some forums, there'd be some arguing backwards and forwards, but no, we've accepted everything the internal auditor said, and we're demonstrating what we're doing about it. Lots of them have already been addressed and corrected, but there's a couple where we're still working on it, and it'll take us some time to fully complete what would satisfy the internal auditor. And the big one being that final one on fixed assets, where the internal auditor quite rightly pointed out that we've got a less than perfect asset register. It won't help for our accounts. We need one for that, but we also need one for good internal control to make sure things don't go walkies, and we are excellent custodians of public money and the various assets that we hold on behalf of the public purse. So as you'll see in that, the council's purchased a new asset register. It gives far more functionality, addresses all the internal auditor's concerns, it provides the RFO with all the information I require, as well as giving Mark and the team all the operational information and prompts in terms of stock takes and regular reviews or whatever. However, it's going to be a very big beast, and we need to feed it at the moment. So we're populating all the records in that asset register, but it will probably take, even with existing resources, it will probably take through to March 2025 before we've completed that. So we're obviously carrying some risk until we've finished that job, but that's a realistic estimate. It would be totally unrealistic to just say, yeah, we'll get that done by the end of this month. It's a very mighty job to do, but it will then provide the council with the best asset register it's got. Doesn't allow deletions, for example. So once everything's loaded onto that, you can keep track, you can generate management reports, and crucially, you can't lose a piece of paper and then an asset to go missing, which is a risk we're carrying at the moment in some areas of the council. So it will also give much better security as well. But you'll see the whole list of the concerns, and you'll see that officers are addressing each one of them if we haven't already done so.
So quite negatively giving us some very positive news then. Are you, Sir Humphrey? Dan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think that, thank you for this. I think that given the, staffing issues that we've had, given the size of the organisation we now are, a super parish, as I've heard being bandied around, I think it's good to see that there's nothing here that's extremely concerning or urgent to fix. Well, some that are urgent to fix, obviously. My question is there any suggestion of when we might get a report that says all of these things have been addressed and fixed? Would we be waiting for another audit to go, yeah, it's all good? Or will we get a supplementary report saying, yeah, we've sorted all this stuff out?
I would give you an update report at regular intervals, but much better than that, the internal auditor will be also checking to make sure that we're not just saying we've done this, that he'll be coming in and checking and doing sample checks and validating that we have done what we said we would. And because the financial regulations require all internal audit reports to come to you, even if I've been massaging the truth, which I would never do, but even if I was tempted to do that during the year, the internal auditor's report will come to you verbatim like it was tonight. And not all councils or RFOs do this. So I think Mark Mulberry was quite impressed that we've just given you the whole of his report, which we should do anyway, but as I say, some councils don't do it. And I could give him the web link that showed this was now in the public domain, because every internal auditor wants their audit reports available to the wider world. So he was quite impressed with that, and he'll make absolutely sure now that he reports back at regular intervals about whether or not we've done this. So we've sort of made a rod for our own back, but for the good reason that you've got an independent expert telling you not everything's perfect, and you would expect then officers to then try and perfect it and improve it. And he'll find other areas, I'm sure, the next time he comes in. He usually comes in twice a year, so I think he's next due in April and May. So you'll probably get another report early summer, and that will come before you, and you'll see what progress we've made according to the internal auditor.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, I really welcome this report. I think some of the issues that you've raised are very serious, and I think particularly one that I've had some exposure to in the last couple of months is around our lack of asset register, register of assets. So in Milford, we had a piece of land which ostensibly was SCC land, which SCC then granted permission to a community group that works in Milford to use and to work on and to improve. To then find out 2 months ago that that asset of ours wasn't actually an asset of ours, it belonged to Guildhall School. Which was very concerning, and considering this particular community group had spent £7,000 improving the land there over the course of 18 months, was very significant to them. And I had various correspondence with members of that community group who were rightly very cheesed off about that. So I think this is a great report, and if we can make sure that these things are done, and particularly that this register of assets is put together, so that we know exactly what we own, and we can make sure that in the future we don't end up giving out land or allowing groups to work on land that actually isn't ours. So no, well done on this report, but I think we just need to bear in mind the consequences of us not having this register of assets and many of these things in place already. I think the fact that we haven't had these things in place for God knows how many years is actually quite concerning. But no, I think this is a step in the right direction.
Chairman, I suppose the starting point for answering that question lies with the land registry. And if we don't already have a subscription to the land registry in order that we're able to do searches and find out who owns what, then we should get one as soon as possible. That should solve a lot of the problems. We may very well discover that we own plots of land that we had no idea that we owned, but a search of the land registry and a subscription to their excellent service would be a good starting place.
Yeah, Chair, thanks. I think Charles has just sort of alerted me on some of this, because looking through this list is quite a long list. And is this a long list because of the clerk's recent departure and the RFO that we haven't had those officers, or are these historic and never been brought to council before? They've been going on for years and years, and we don't know about it. I mean, one I picked up today on, I'm very pleased actually that you are summoned to attend, so that has changed today on the agenda, not required or requested or whatever the terminology was. The other one I noticed, it was quite a big thing a few years ago now, in the council obtaining the general power of competence, and obviously that's now gone. And I assume it's gone because the clerk gone with the qualification Silca. I think that's the what you say. The clerk has to be Silca qualified, I think, is that right? For you to be able to have the GPC, and we don't have that at the moment. Now I've got no idea what the GPC is and whether this council has ever taken that on, over the past several years. And, are we going to head towards that again, or is it worth it? I mean, that'd be down to the leadership, I guess, of the council. But all in all, I think, again, thanks for this report. I don't expect officers to say that these have been going on for years. And that's some questions that I can be behind the scenes.
Thank you. Can I just bring the chief in?
Thank you very much, Chair. We've talked a lot about words transparency, accountability. The word that I have heard councillors use this evening a couple of times that I have been talking to senior officers about is the word grip. And in the example of the Godolphin school issue, it's absolutely important that we have our processes spot on and have that grip, because there are significant implications to giving out incorrect information. In that particular instance, I've offered an apology, offered my personal support to that community group, and I understand that discussions are going well. The second part, in terms of a general power of competence, the RFO will set out the impact of such a loss, but this specifically relates to me. After discussing with the chief executive of the Society of Local Committee Clerks, there was a 12-month waiting period before anybody was allowed to undertake that particular qualification. I'm pleased to say that chief executive has seen sense, and that given my background in local government, other public sector and private sector organisations, and indeed my partial MBA and master's qualifications, that they will indeed let me undertake that level 3 qualification in the next couple of weeks. Just to add that the record is currently stood at 4.5 months for that completion of the qualification, so I'll give them a good run for their money.
Shot down my grade 1 CSE in art.
Yeah, just to up and report and say, how important, an asset register is, but vitally important then is also to have and know the conditions of those assets so that we're not reacting. We've got some planned life when maintenance is required, that we're not getting panic reports, the ceiling's falling down. I'm not going to look up, but we need to know the condition of the asset we've got so we can plan the cycle to maintenance. Absolutely. And we'll have to pay to get that done for us. We haven't got the ability in-house. We'll have to get that paid for, but it's essential we have it. Otherwise, we're not going to plan for the next 10 years unless we know what state our assets are in.
Can I just, is that right then? Can I just maybe try and bring this discussion to a close a little bit and say how impressed I am with the way that our 2 new senior officers have hit the ground running. They really have impressed me a great deal so far with their, I think grip is a good word, on all the intricacies that they're uncovering as they settle into their new roles. And it makes me very optimistic for the future of this council. So thank you to both of you very much.
Just been said, actually, I think we've had an amazingly good set of financial reports here. And about trying to be, and working out our assets is something we should be doing, we should have done years ago. Yeah, I would say it's always been a very complicated subject. And I know Milford Hollow there, and I know from when we used to plant bulbs there donkeys years ago, we could never work out who owned the land. It was always a debate between Godolphin National Rail, Wiltshire Council, or Salisbury District Council in those days. And of course, over the years, that's what's the trouble often been. District Council disappeared. Housing departments transferred land from housing department to the general fund then transferred land back to the housing fund, depending on where the economics worked at the time, and depending on all of that. The water ball going back further. gave land to the councils because it was just easy to get rid of something they didn't really want. And there was never that written down documentation throughout history that went alongside all that. And although, yeah, land registers will show up an awful lot, land registers only record what's happened since, I don't know what year it is, 1991, is it? I'm not sure. So anything that predates that, it won't show. So there will always be these bits of confusion. I know there's a land in St Paul's, which no one really knows the ownership of that bit of land because a housing developer built it, left a communal bit of land there, didn't want to manage it, own it, and it just got left and left and left. And then the city council takes over running it. So there's always going to be confusion and areas. But yeah, we should strive to do it all. But I suspect in 10 years' time, whoever is sitting here will still be moaning that we don't have a full and accurate record of all our assets that we own.
So councillor Tones, they're admitting that it was the district council's fault, and that in 10 years' time, it'll be the city council's fault. Okay, let's bring this to an end. We have a recommendation. The council notes the completion of an interim audit and considers the audit findings. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Bolwell. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Charleston. All those in favour? That is carried. Ending. Okay, item 18. There are no matters or any special circumstances, so I'm going to bring this meeting to a. Thank you, everybody. A lot worse.
Thank you.
No, it's cool. Thank you. It's